Well, good afternoon. This is a joint presentation between the Open University in the UK and the University of Edinburgh at the UK. Can I just get a sense of how many people here know about the Open University? Pretty much. So my slides will go very quickly. The plan behind this talk is Tim and I were colleagues at the Open University for about 19 years. So the Open University taught him everything he knows about distance and open learning. So what we thought might be quite nice is to do a presentation for you where I give you a quick skim over the top of some of the key Open University principles and a little bit of history. And then Tim is going to take over and give you a sense of how he has developed the strategy for online masters at Edinburgh University. So I'm going to talk about open and distance learning pedagogy. I'm not going to talk about the Open University in a great deal of detail, but I have colleagues here. Hannah here I'll mention her later in the slides. She's very willing to talk to Empty about any of our recent developments. And I would commend to you a session tomorrow. I don't know if Matthew Harrington's here. I can't see him. Oh, hi. There's a very good session tomorrow on Thursday where you'll hear a bit more about how Open edX has been used in the development of courses. So I commend Matthew and team to you if you want to find out more about that. In the course of the talk, we will talk about pedagogy. Tim has a strong notion of what the ecology of e-learning is and how that's influenced things. He's got an interesting set of case studies developed at the OU over the past 10 or 12 years. And what he's been thinking about, particularly for this talk, is a sort of multi-directional flow between ideas developed in parts of the university about MOOCs, which in some cases have led to the development of serious online master's programs, and vice versa. Sometimes his master's programs have spawned, if that's the right word, examples of very interesting MOOCs. And we'll try and pull things together for you at the end of the 35 minutes and talk about how this all hangs together as some interesting ideas about open and distance learning pedagogy. So to begin with, you all know this, most of you raised your hands. The Open University was invented in 1969. It has a fabulous mission. If you ever wonder whether you're open or not, I commend to you our vision statement, which is open to people, places, methods, and ideas. Can't say fairer than that, I think. And the really unique thing about the Open University is that we do not require any entrance qualifications. So we really are open to people. You want to study with the Open University, you can. Of course, people take up the option of studying with us who already have some kind of qualification, but I think the last time I looked at the figures, about 38% of people on our undergraduate courses did not have enough to qualify for entrance in a conventional university. We are the university of choice for students with disabilities, a large proportion of our students, 21,000. The overall numbers for the university is something like 170,000 if you include about 40,000 students who are in programs that we validate rather than directly studying with us. We're the biggest university in the UK, but we do have a significant number of students studying overseas for undergraduate qualifications. As I said before, we got into online and open quite early. The aspect of the Open University which wasn't open was we asked people to pay fees. Not very big fees, but you had to pay something to join our courses. And thanks to a grant from the Hewlett Foundation back 10 years ago, we got enough money to put onto a website freely available a third of the course content that we had at the time. The impetus from the Hewlett Foundation was that they wanted us to good quality learning resources to be available for learners who wouldn't otherwise have access. And from that point, we've developed an OpenLearn website. The numbers are quite staggering. If you want to hear more about that, Hannah's your lady for telling you how that developed. How are we successful if we support learners who have no background? Well, we have a supported open learning model that requires good quality learning materials to be available for you to learn either individually or with others, different sorts of resources, and also a really thought through way of supporting learners as they study with us. So we have a supportive open learning model, and the only remark I will make about OU strategy at the moment is we're really looking hard at that model to think about how we can make it personalised, supported open learning. So that's the direction of travel. As I said, online working, no entry requirements, complete range of courses from short free online courses to paid for masters, professional doctorates and PhDs. It's a bit more expensive. I won't go into politics, but that's the UK for you. And we have a lot of MOOCs, and we have our own MOOC platform, FutureLearn. I'm not going to talk about them. I'm just going to talk at a very top level of what we know from an experience of about 40 years teaching in an open online fashion. The key thing we know is distance learning pedagogies work. We've had to work at it. We've had to think, how do you provide practical experiences in the lab for students? We had to think about how motivation rises and falls as you go through a degree. But one of the things we've discovered, and before there was learning analytics, we did learning analytics and discovered that support for students really influences retention. One of the holy grails for anybody working in open and distance learning, you can do assessment this way, can be supported by online systems. But for me, the main message is quality. The quality process is all. I think we inherited from our exposure. All our teaching materials were, even before the advent of the internet, very publicly available in bookshops. Our academics were exposed to the nation on BBC television programmes, so that there was this learning was in the open, and the materials that we produced were in the open, so that we had to be really careful about developing quality assurance processes. And Anne this morning talked about the responsibility of the provider rather than the platform. I think that's what he meant. That's certainly true, but that takes work, and it's not the work of an individual. In terms of authentic activities, it makes sense to be active. As Anant was telling us this morning, had a particular model of interpolated activities. But I would make a plea for authentic activities. You need to engage the learner with activities that feel like they matter and feel that they are taking them towards their goal of knowing about a subject and becoming a scientist or something else. We've got lots of things to say about accessibility. I won't go into too much of them here, but I think our current trend towards personalisation really responds to the sense that we have that even in large scale online learning systems, you can have personalisation that makes a difference. And Tim is going to tell you how all that matters.
Thank you very much, Eileen. And it's nice that Eileen and I are talking together. The University of Edinburgh is very successful with MOOCs. It's very successful with masters. And without being arrogant, I think I worked for 19 years for the Open University before I moved to the University of Edinburgh, the vice principal in charge of implementing this area. Jeff Hayward at the University of Edinburgh came from the Open University. The vice principal in charge of all our arts, humanities and social sciences came from the Open University. So very, very strong influence. I'm interested in ecology. I've been doing this sort of work in e-learning since 1970. I'm very old. A question that I got interested in was, are MOOCs killing anything in the e-learning world? The short answer is they aren't. And another thing I was interested in was, can you still hear me? Yeah, okay. How how big is a MOOC? And 100 MOOCs, MOOCs are bigger than I thought they might be. 100 MOOCs, if you look at regular credit standards, is about the size of an undergraduate degree. 25 MOOCs. Huh? Huh? Oh, okay. A master's degree is about 25 MOOCs. I'm quite interested in minnows, this idea that 5 minutes from a MOOC, 5 minutes of a video is an interesting thing, and Ant talked about it, a number of us have talked about it. And I was very disappointed, because if you try to take a fish model for this area, then if you look at an undergraduate degree, well, it's 100,000 minnows. And that, if you weigh it, it's about a baby killer whale. Baby killer whale is quite small. I was hoping it would be a minnow to a proper big whale. But it is interesting. We are talking about 5 orders of magnitude between a minnow and an undergraduate course. So we've been doing online masters in Edinburgh in earnest for about 15 years. It's been a slow build. About a third of our postgraduate provision at Edinburgh now, about 3,000 students are on online courses, and I'm going to tell you a couple of flagship ones of those. Much more recently, obviously, 2012, we got into MOOCs. MOOCs is a bit more sizable, about 2 million, bit more than 2 million people actively engaged in MOOCs. We're heading towards 50 MOOCs. To give you a bit of context back, we've got about 80 online masters, 50 MOOCs. Quite a big community. We've got about 250 people who work in the university who are engaged with MOOCs in different ways. And we use 3 main platforms. We use Coursera, which is where most of our stuff is, and then we use FutureLearn a bit more than we use edX. But we also have purpose-built stuff. We use Blackboard Learn. We use Google Tools. We use a whole pile, a very heterogeneous approach. So we are not committed to one platform. Quite the reverse. We are determinedly committed to multiple platforms. We don't know which will survive. We do know that none of the platforms is perfect. And so for example, if you're very bothered about mobility, you ought to be on FutureLearn. If you're very bothered about tailoring, you should probably be building it in HTML with some part of simulation tools. So quite a lot on the go. This is probably our flagship in terms of MOOCs to masters. We have, with philosophy, we've now got 4 MOOCs. The Introduction to Philosophy MOOC is the most popular MOOC, not in the world, or it used to be the most popular MOOC in the world. The Open University now has the most popular MOOC in the world, which is English as a second language from the British Council on FutureLearn, but it's the most popular MOOC on Coursera, which in turn is the most popular platform. More than 1 million enrollments. So that MOOC really had a big impact. 1 million learners. It generated a very good textbook. It generated another MOOC called Philosophy and the Sciences, which generated another textbook. Generated another MOOC called Intellectual Humility, which generated another textbook, and generated about £500,000 in grant money, which generated another MOOC, which generated a book and which brought in another 1.5 million. So we're pretty happy, really. And these 4 MOOCs, which have produced £2 million in grant money and 4 books, have also produced 2 online masters. So that was a very interesting impact. An incredibly successful MOOC generates 3 more MOOCs, generates 4 books, generates £2 million of money, and generates 2 online masters. A very nice curve, and it's quite clear here the direction of travel in the University of Edinburgh was MOOCs to masters. And very good widening participation. This MOOC, most MOOCs have older people, but this MOOC also has attracted a lot of school students who are interested in what philosophy in university is. It's attracted people from low income. We're particularly pleased of the way that it has gone into prisons. And we have people who are, and we think it is very good for people in prisons as they're preparing to leave to study things. So 3 of our MOOCs have a non-trivial presence in prisons. We have one on critical thinking, we have one on global challenging, and we have this, and we think that is a very important contribution. So we have people in philosophy now publishing in the Journal of Correction about how you use philosophy, online philosophy, to help prisoners in prison. So very nice and very, very enthusiastic philosophers. It's raised our profile. I mean, Edinburgh's profile didn't really need to be raised in philosophy. David Hume, Adam Smith, you know, a whole pile of people, including some very famous contemporary philosophers, but it's raised the profile. But it's also been very good for public participation. Another curve which is quite different, and is I think one of the other reasons why we've been successful, is we have for a long time had a very successful online masters in online masters. Basically very good masters using e-learning about e-learning. It's trained lots of professionals. I encourage you to go and look at it. It's recently, this online masters has generated a hybrid MOOC. This is a MOOC on social methods, social science methods in digital education, which can also be used for credit in the online masters, and also has moved across to it's also used in an on-campus masters in social sciences. So this is hybrid in 2 ways. It's hybrid between the MOOC and the masters, and hybrid between online and not online. And the folks, Sian Bain and her colleagues, very, very inventive. So Edinburgh is one of the leaders. People use different names. We call them teacher bots. That is, when you've got a big MOOC, like the philosophy MOOC with 100,000 learners, you really need to use the machine learning techniques so that you can say, here's a frequently asked question about ontology or whatever, and we automate the answer. So something good to look at in Edinburgh is the teacher bots, which of course are being used across the piece now. A lot of our stuff is self-reflective. So we have a digital media design MSc in our College of Art, which relates particularly to things like animation, relates to online methods. Then going in the direction of online masters to MOOC, we've had a long presence online teaching veterinary science, and then we generated a very nice little MOOC called Do You Have What It Takes to Be a Vet? And of course, if you take the MOOC, then what are we expecting you to do? We're expecting you to take the online masters in some aspect of veterinary science. And that has generated various ones. Recently, we have a very nice online MSc all around the world in animal welfare. Very nice structure. One of my points is that when you've got an ecology like we have of postgraduate and MOOCs, there are a whole range of exit points. So if you look at this online masters, you can exit with 20 credits, which is about the size of a micro masters, or you can exit with 60 credits and have a certificate, or 120 credits and have a diploma, or do a bit of research as well and have an online and have a full master's degree. And very nice pattern of flexibility, different routes, cat and dog welfare, equine behaviour, and also very nice models, supported a multi-model for dissertations, and lots of very nice impact of the students who are taking this in different places. Edinburgh is very strong on environmental issues, and where there's something where we reach out to the world, and obviously we reach out to the world for our Global Academy in environment, then one of the ways that is supported is by an online masters. We have, in terms of our global academies, and the Edinburgh Global Academies, there are 5 of them, their primary mechanism is online masters teaching in developing countries. So the Global Health Academy has online masters in infectious diseases, produced in partnership with colleagues in places like Uganda and Tanzania, with support of agencies like the Gates Foundation, and very much outward looking from our very strong medical base. And again, if you look at that, online masters, it has different exits, depending. You might be a paramedical, or you might be somebody who's already a doctor. And really nice dissertation topics. Another of our flagships, we teach, and are quite well known for, won prizes for, we teach online surgery. We've been doing that for about 11 years. To study surgery with us online, it's a partnership with the Royal College of Surgeons, which is annoyingly older than the University of Edinburgh, 1505. In order to do that, you have to be a surgeon, you have to be in a hospital that allows you to do surgery, and then you have to come back and be checked by these. You have to come to Edinburgh and be checked by both the university for your intellectual competence and the College of Surgeons for your practical competence. So this is an online master's where coming to Edinburgh for a couple of weeks is an absolute requirement. We really don't want to say we think this person is an advanced surgeon unless we have met them. This is very successful. In our world, we're talking now 500 currently. This is our strongest online program. Won an award from the Queen, steadily growing. And interestingly, it took quite a while. Started with about 20, we've now got about 500, curve continuing nicely. And interesting to see, this is a slide, I like this slide. It says, successful open and distance learning must be contextual, active, collaborative, flexible, positive and supportive, enjoyable and engaging. And you might think that slide was written by a sophisticated educational technologist like Professor Scanlon, who's the Regius Professor of Open Education. It wasn't. That slide was written by the Regius Professor of Surgery. Now, you could not be more establishment than the Regius Professor of Surgery, who, as well as talking about surgery, is talking about these nice educational principles. I'm very, very pleased with this. I never imagined we could have an online master's in history. Why have we got an online master's in history? Because the historians know they're more practical than the philosophers. And when they saw that the philosophers could do it, they did it. They've got more than 100 students around the world. I particularly like this slide, which is they got students around the world to post their study spaces. And so you have this really quite nice set of environments around the world. We're boring, we're conventional, as well as being exciting and innovative. So being boring and conventional, obviously we have an online program in data science, technology and innovation. It's a trope, I apologize, but we're forced into this. It's a cultural conformity. If MIT's got one, Stanford's got one, Edinburgh's got to have one too. We've got one, it's quite a nice one. It's driven from data science particularly. It's got a certificate with it. It's got 5 participants. It's got physics. It's got informatics, which is what we call computer science at Edinburgh. It's got social and political science in for some of the statistical methods. Edinburgh was the place that invented, didn't only have Thomas Bayes, who you may have heard of, but also the first statistical package, computer statistical package in the social sciences was developed at Edinburgh. So actually our political and social scientists are really very adept. So they're appropriate partners here. And a very nice pattern taking us into things like medical informatics and into our doctoral training centre. What are our challenges? In order to put together the material for this talk and the talk some of you heard me give on Monday, I emailed all 50 of our MOOC teams and all 80 of our online masters teams, and a few of them said some version of, well, a problem with things like Coursera or, I have to say, edX is they're weird. That is, for somebody in the developing world, it's Western, educated, institutional, rich, democratic stuff. It doesn't look like our stuff. It's weird stuff. And there is a cultural issue. I mean, the Edinburgh way of trying to solve the cultural issue is to work in partnership with Macquarie University, to work in partnership with close partnership with universities in South Africa and so on. Other challenge, how to tell, we've got a very nice MOOC on the Higgs boson. But it's hard, it's very difficult. There's a very nice comic book called How to Tell a Proton from a Crouton. Crouton, by the way, is what you put on your soup. I prefer them when they cook with garlic. But there is an issue of how do you teach really, really hard stuff? And the way our particle physicists have decided to do it is by saying it's really, really hard. And there's 7 billion of you out there, we don't expect that many of you, and we're going to do it slowly and steadily. But there's an issue teaching hard stuff. There is comparison shopping, an issue particularly when you've got a pile of different platforms and lots of MOOCs with the same name. And some people will start 4 or 5 MOOCs with the same name at the same time. And then they will decide after a week or two which they like the best, and they'll stop the other 4. That really makes a mess of your learning analytics. Because they were not studying, they were doing something quite different. They were doing comparison shopping. It's like saying your brand of socks is a failure because somebody looked at them and didn't buy them. You know, so lots of people are going to look at your socks. Some people are going to buy them. Issue of training the tutors, recapturing open. The Open University has got wonderful philosophy, rhetoric about it. We need to get back to that. Obviously, there's an issue of software rot and there's an issue of platform obsolescence. But it's very clear. You know, a struggle for Edinburgh now is we have got platforms, homemade platforms, were developed 10 years ago. The operating systems those platforms supposed to exist don't exist anymore. So there's all sorts of platform obsolescence and software rot, and I speak as a computer scientist, does seem to be a real thing. You know, you don't use software for a year and then you try and use it and it stopped working. Nothing seems to have changed except it's not working anymore. Learner preferences. Learners are very different, and here are 7 dimensions on which they differ. What is their definition of success or exit? And we now design for different exits. The learner is there for interest, the learner who wants a micro, wants a MOOC credit, the learner who wants a full master's. They differ with what sort of group size. Some learners are happiest with a group size of 1. Some learners are happiest with a group size of 100, so they can hide at the edge. What sort of mentor, what sort of peer interaction they work with, how much privacy they need. Do they need a cohort? Quite a lot of learners really do want a cohort. Some learners don't. And do they need, I think one of the attractive things about edX, which is also a feature of future learners, a very strong developing notion of how are we going to support communities of learners. I think that is really very important. And then there are blessings. I'll come back to this on the last slide. I think for me the key blessing, and it's an Open University style blessing, is learner autonomy. But there is our ability to combine pedagogies. People used to be quite hard line about, what sort of cognitive theory of learning did they support, or were they into drill and practice. Now people are, it's like fusion cooking. People, they take a bit of Skinner, they take a bit of Piaget, a bit of Vygotsky, mix it all up. And there's no harm in that, actually. I think there's a lot of good in that. There's an issue of aligning with technologies, which I think is a real plus. Diversity of access. One of the things that's pleased me the most about the Edinburgh MOOCs is that 3 of our MOOCs are actively used in prisons. Our MOOCs are used in secondary schools in poor parts of town. Our MOOCs are used by clubs of old people who are doing it for hobby. These types of access, very nice. PhD students get a lot of benefit. Your PhD students, it gives them an extremely interesting thing to do. Learning to tutor philosophy to an incredibly heterogeneous audience, some of whom are high school kids who don't know very much, some of whom are retired professors of philosophy. You learn an awful lot if your job is to deal with an online group like that. For us at Edinburgh, there's been a tremendous benefit in building reputation. If you Google astrobiology, we come top. It's very unfair because these Americans at NASA, they have many more astrobiologists than we do. But we've got a jolly good MOOC, and they don't. So we come absolute top, above the Wikipedia entry. So the number, equine health, which is fair. We are world leaders in the health of horses. And so it's fair that we're number 1, but we're also number 1 in astrobiology, which is a MOOC phenomenon. And there are obviously the international communities. When I talk to any of the folks, the 130 different emails I send out, pretty much everybody comes back and saying, and we've got students studying this in Kazakhstan. In Kazakhstan, we have 2 autonomous groups of astrobiologists who came from the astrobiology MOOC. So that is very nice. This is where we were 3 years ago. We're about 50 masters with a population of about 2,000, about 750,000 MOOC learners, almost nothing in open studies. This is where we are very comfortably going in 2025. All I can tell you is we'll be there earlier. I will certainly have 10,000 students studying at a postgraduate level online remotely from the university. We'll certainly be in the hundreds of MOOCs. We have tremendous enthusiasm, and our open studies, that is for interest stuff we do, will be dominated. This is not wild predictions. This is you just plot the graphs of where we are at the moment, and you can see that the University of Edinburgh will comfortably be in that position. And then lastly, I do think autonomy is the big, big virtue. The ability for learners to identify their own goals, to identify their preferred learning partners, identify their teaching mentor guide, see what language or visualization they're using. I mean, one of the interesting things about MOOC learners is how much stuff they do that isn't on the MOOC they're doing. MOOC learners will typically, they may be in a Facebook group, they may be in LinkedIn, they may be using a database of some description. So they can do that. They can choose their route to the goals, and I think one of our jobs is to make sure there are multiple routes for the multiple types of learners, define their personal success criteria, have reflective meta strategies, and I have to say, Eileen is an honest woman. She does a lot of work. I'm a parasite. I'm a head of a university. So everything that I have said to you from the University of Edinburgh has been stolen from someone else. Eileen has mentioned a few of her colleagues there, but you'll see, I told you, I don't know if you believe me, that we sent 130 emails. I didn't use all the material. I think about 5 of these are Open University people that Eileen is referring to. The rest are me. You've got 5 minutes. You may ask questions or you may attack. Eileen is Scottish. If you attack, she'll attack you back. I'm Irish German. Half of me will attack you back and the other half will be sort of respectful, the German bit. But I will attack you back. Go for it.
Super impressive. You highlighted a few courses early on that were hits when you generated cash and then you used that investment to fund future work. I'm curious, as you step back and look at the entire program, how would you characterize your original investment? And are you currently generating cash from this online programs, or are you consuming cash, and how do you think about your investment strategy?
Oh, that's a very good question. I mean, to start with, if we go back to 2002 and the development of the online masters, this was essentially professional schools like medicine, education, law, veterinary medicine, who wanted to reach out another way. And those enterprises are self-sustaining. The online masters have fees which generate income, which pay for the extra staff. When we went into the MOOC world in 2012, we decided to just go for it. That required an investment. Our estimate is that a MOOC learner costs us about $1. So having gone to a bit more than 2 million MOOC learners who did something non-trivial, we reckon we've spent about $2 million. The MOOCs have definitely not generated $2 million. On the other hand, we've generated more than $2 million in grants just in philosophy from the successful MOOCs. So we feel very happy about it. What I'm roughly expecting is, if you look at our 3,000 online master's students, I'm expecting the courses that we currently have to about double in size. So that'll take us to 6,000. And then we have a few areas where we think we can comfortably get more than 1,000 students on the same online masters. And we're quite happy within the university to invest about $1 million in an online masters. That seems to be a perfectly reasonable level of investment. It's probably a bit less than the Open University would invest, although it may be what the Open University invests now. It's a bit less than what people used to invest in distance learning, but it's about right. A very successful online master's course, ab initio, $1 million has got to be fine when you look at the course fees you can charge. So we feel quite comfortable about it. Certainly the online masters are looking after themselves. At the moment, perhaps we're cross-subsidizing the MOOCs. On the other hand, we don't see a student come into online veterinary postgraduate now who hasn't done a MOOC. One of our MOOCs in online veterinary. So the MOOCs are paying for themselves probably as a form of marketing and as a form of getting grants. Very good question. Any other questions? Yes, please.
For some of the other programs, like philosophy or more humanities ones, how do you get the instructors to be open to adopting it? And
how do you get them to?
To adopt the online space?
Well, this will sound stupid. I mean, in 2012, I wanted to do 6. I thought we'd do two in the arts and humanities, 2 in medicine and veterinary medicine, and 2 in science and engineering. And I thought, oh, philosophy would be nice. So I said to the philosophers, do a philosophy MOOC, please. They didn't do the philosophy MOOC I wanted them to, but they did do a philosophy MOOC. I said to the astrobiologists, God, that astrobiology is so cool, do an astrobiology MOOC. And the astrobiologist said, all right. So I asked 6 groups of people, and they all said yes, which is very nice of them. Now, because that was so visibly successful, I mean, I had the most positive university senate the University of Edinburgh has ever had. We have many more people wanting to do MOOCs than we can support. So we will by the end of this year we'll be up to 50. If we had more resources, there's many more academics wish to do it than we can support. But to start with, it was, I think, because I asked people really nicely. We'd better stop there. Thank you very much for your attention.